Welcome everyone to Not That Media. My name is John. Now if you're a horror fan like me, you probably love nothing more than to seek out as much insight and behind the scenes knowledge, the good, the bad and the ugly that went into the creation of your favourite films and TV shows. Over the last few years, Cult Screenings UK Ltd have released a number of horror related documentaries that have really encapsulated this fan demand. Their hits include Leviathan, the story of Hellraiser and Hellbound, Hellraiser 2, You're So Cool, Brewster, the Fright Night story, Pennywise, the story of It, and most recently, Hollywood Dreams and Nightmares, the Robert Englund story. Now these guys are not interested in just retreading the same old stories, and indeed you may notice that that last release actually focuses more on Robert Englund as opposed to the Nightmare on Elm Street series. That's because there already is a Nightmare on Elm Street documentary called Never Sleep Again, and that 9-hour odd, plus with the extras, mammoth journey through the Nightmare on Elm Street series is unparalleled. So these guys, rather than just rehash and send things out, they look differently and decided to focus on Robert Englund. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. I just wanted to make you aware that these guys, they don't just do your standard rehash and the same 6 stories you're used to. They painstakingly take months, if not years, to research, develop and track down every single person on the cast and crew that they can, and to find all those photographs, rare behind the scenes clips, copies of the scripts, all that stuff that is either thought to be lost in time or the studio or people never wanted you to see, and put it together in a really glossy, high quality documentary. In March and April of 2024, they announced a pre-order for a very special companion piece to one of those documentaries I've just listed. So come along with me, get your inhaler full of battery acid as we thrust our fist against the post and we have a look at Pennywise, the story of It, the companion book to the award-winning documentary.
You all taste so much better when you're afraid, and you are next.
Before I go into the book in a little bit more detail, I do want to spend a little bit of time just talking about the ABC miniseries of It, released in 1990, as I do feel today it is somewhat in the shadow of its 2017-2019 theatrical counterparts, but this miniseries deserves its place in history. Part 1 premiered on November 18th, 1990 and was watched by an amazing 17.5 million people. Part 2 then premiered 2 nights later on November 20th, 1990 and was watched by 19.2 million. The film charts the progress and the ultimate battle against evil when 7 unlikely children form the Losers Club, or Lucky 7 depending on what side of the fence you're on, and they go about their town realising that something's not quite right as a mythical entity that has been in their home of Derry for centuries has been rudimentarily killing children every 27 years. This shape-shifting creature can take whatever form it likes, but it likes to take the form of the thing you're most afraid of. The most notable and arguably its favourite form was that of Pennywise the dancing clown. Now when people think about their fear of clowns, Pennywise the clown is always top of the list, and that is thanks to the legendary actor Tim Curry and his pitch perfect Pennywise, which is considered today to be the archetype of the sinister and evil clown and has never left pop culture in over 30 years, despite the fact that Tim Curry and Pennywise were only on screen for less than 20 minutes of a 3-hour feature. That is one heck of an impact for a character to have. But despite the fact that Pennywise is a cult icon and a pop culture legend, and the ABC miniseries has gone on to garner such acclaim, its physical releases in terms of DVDs and Blu-rays were always very bare bones, and I never really found too many people talking about it. Everyone loves to talk about Pennywise and everyone loves to talk about how he floats and beep beep and all these kind of things. There was never any kind of deep dive. Was Pennywise always looking like that? Was the spider at the end of the miniseries always that terrible? What led to these situations? There was never really any true answers that was readily available. But that's where Cult Screenings came in. In 2021, via Indiegogo crowdfunding, they created the mammoth 2-hour documentary titled Pennywise, The Story of It, which provided that very deep dive look that we were all waiting for. Now, I missed the Indiegogo crowdfunding because I wasn't aware of it, but unlike the other documentaries, Leviathan and You're So Cool, Brewster, Pennywise, The Story of It is still commercially available at the time of recording, and in fact you can pick it up on Blu-ray for a bargain £9.99 at HMV, or even £7.99 on DVD. So if you are a fan of this and you've never heard of this documentary, I do recommend you buy that, because unlike the other ones, you can still get it. But the documentary, it has to be said, went on to fantastic critical acclaim and won the Fangoria Chainsaw Award in 2023 for documentaries. So in 2024, we now have this book, which, as I have already said, it is called Pennywise, The Story of It, the companion book to the award-winning documentary. So this book comprises of 160 pages of high-quality photographs, interviews with over 40 members of the cast and crew, over 300 never-before-seen photographs, and there are only 1,000 copies, and as far as I'm aware, this is only going to be available on the Cult Screenings UK Ltd website. Not saying that's 100% accurate, but I would have thought with such a limited quantity, it probably won't get to public retail release. So again, at the time of this recording, this book is commercially available. It is still available to order now. It is out now. If you want to save disappointment and you don't want to spend a lot of money later down the road, I really suggest you pick this thing up. It is £24.99, and the delivery, depending on where you are, in the UK is approximately £8, and abroad is obviously depending on where you are. I also really appreciated as a collector the fact that this book has got a special foil sticker on the inside which has a handwritten number for my release. So I know, I believe, let's have a quick look, number 198 of 1000. Which is really a welcome addition. This was not advertised on the pre-order. There was no mention of it as far as I could see. So I'm going to give a real big thumbs up to Cult Screenings UK about that, because it's always nice to get that little surprise. I genuinely exclaimed when I actually noticed it, because as you can see, there's no information on the cover to tell you that it is. There's nothing on the back to tell you it is. I just happened to be flicking through it, didn't even see it the first couple of times when I was looking, went to the front and thought, wow, okay, that's really cool. So really, really big a thumbs up on that. So the book documents the production from start to end and highlights from what I've looked at, because this is not a spoiler review. I am not going to sit here and go through it page by page with you. I think something this special should be appreciated by those who are lucky enough to buy it. But at the same time, I do want to give you a couple of hints as what's in it, because there were some surprises in it. It not only deals with Pennywise and the story of it, but it actually has a real good section about the rise of Stephen King in books and movies. It talks about his childhood, his home, and the inspirations, and how he got to the books, and how they went on to the movies, and some of the opinions and acclaim. It's not just a here's it, it's here's Stephen King. And it gave some fantastic information as well, which I was not aware of. Again, just because there just isn't any real decent behind the scenes stuff outside of what these guys have been doing. I had no idea that once again, George A. Romero was involved and was developing a script for it. That means in the multiverse that we all live in now, there is a universe where Stephen King's It was created by George Romero at the same time as The Stand, Pet Sematary, and all those other projects that Stephen King and George Romero were working on, which never ever came to fruition. I think even Salem's Lot, if I didn't just say that already. It has a really concise and a really professional background on Tim Curry, and it even touches on, very briefly, the alternative actors that they considered for Pennywise. I'm not going to say who these actors are, but what I would say is, Tim Curry is so embedded in that role that even though the other actors are really good actors and a couple of surprises, my brain just cannot comprehend these actors as those characters. It's just impossible. I'm not going to tell you, actually. I'm tempted to tell you, but I don't want to. I think it's important for people to be able to find this stuff on their own. But again, if this is the tease you need to buy the book, then great. It gives a lot of development detail on Pennywise and the road that led to Pennywise's ultimate look. One thing I found really impressive is how collaborative this book shows the process was. This was not a simple case of Tim Curry rocked up, was handed an outfit, was handed some paint and told, there's your look, go. This was a real collaboration to result in this iconic look here, which, while some people may say is very simple, and hey, if you're a Bill Skarsgård 2017 Pennywise fan and you think that he looks better, good for you. I think they are two very separate Pennywises and they are two very separate looks for two very different perceptions of this character. It shows, and again, not to go into too much detail, but one of the successes of the It miniseries, I feel, is how much of Tim Curry comes out of Pennywise. And when you read this book or you see these photographs, and when you watch the documentary, because they do touch on it, there is so much more appliances and makeup and effects that they were intending to add to Tim Curry's face, which I'm not saying it would have made it pointless having Tim Curry in the role, but it would have, I think, and he thought, greatly dampened the performance. Ironically, I think the thing that people find the most frightening is just Tim Curry's acting. It's not the makeup, it's not necessarily the scary teeth or things like that. I just think Tim Curry is so good. He can be really threatening one moment and yet a real childishness the next moment. It's a real piece of work if you haven't seen it. It goes on to detail the cast, both the kids and their older counterparts, how they were found, what they were doing, where they've gone. It touches on, if you're fans, obviously, of Seth Green and things like that. It goes through all that kind of stuff, which is real interesting because, to be fair, I think, with the exception of John Ridder, I believe his name is, I hope I got that right, and Seth Green and Tim Curry, I think the majority of the other actors, whilst are accomplished in their own field, haven't gone on to be remembered and recognised in quite the way, obviously, a Tim Curry has. So it's nice that they get their recognition. It's nice that time is spent showing them and who they are and what they were doing. It then moves on to chart the movie's production, all the way through from everything from script writing to finding locations to makeup effects to the puppetry. This is a deep dive into everything. It shows how Tommy Lee Wallace came onto the project. Tommy Lee Wallace, if you're not a fan of knowing your directors in horror films, he was the director of Fright Night 2 and Halloween 3. He is also the man credited with designing the original Michael Myers mask, and if you're a real fan, you will know that Tommy Lee Wallace played the Michael Myers who punches through the closet at the end of Halloween 1. Ironically, it should be said that when Michael Myers was designed, Tommy Lee Wallace offered two different ideas. One was the William Shatner mask that we all know and love, but another, ironically, was a clown. So it's interesting how the universe works when it comes to things like that. The book touches upon the impact of the miniseries and its effect on pop culture and the ongoing fear of clowns. It also talks about the legacy of the miniseries and its cast. Where are they now? Where have they gone? What happened to the film? I think, again, I haven't read this cover to cover, but I did see some little bits about the remake. Not any kind of deep dive, but they do recognise it. And oh yes, fans, there are plenteous pictures of that damn spider. The original designs are in there, the original drawings are in there, and the road to what would eventually appear on screen is well documented. It is shown in all its glory. I'm not here to talk about the miniseries, but I'm going to be honest. I don't think the spider's that terrible. I think it is what it is. I think the problem is that Tim Curry's Pennywise is so strong and so powerful that by the time he makes his little last appearance and says, "Oh, you'll never see me, you'll only see what your little minds can comprehend," your brain is thinking, well, if this is not the true form. So a Harryhausen style stop motion spider comes out, which, spoilers, they just kind of push over and just kick the hell out of for 5 minutes. It is a little bit of a disappointing ending, and with retrospect, everyone on board is in agreement that the spider never quite realised what it was meant to be. But in the book, it is given its due, it's given its time, and for those people who just cannot see past the terrible effect, it's not terrible, but it's considered a terrible effect. Give it a look, because actually it's nice to know what they were trying to do versus what they actually did. This book is a real treasure chest of information, not only for fans of the miniseries, but if you're a fan of Stephen King, Tim Curry, the cast and the crew, if you're a fan of puppetry and makeup effects and seeing design photographs and seeing from drawing to conception to inspirations, it's all in here. It's a really good deep dive book. It is made with such love and attention to detail that I have come to expect from Cult Screenings UK, and this was a really great experience to be able to go behind the scenes and touch upon such an iconic miniseries. I really hope you've enjoyed this video. Like I say, although this is a book review video, I didn't want to sit here and spoil the book. It is a great piece of work and is an ultimate companion to the documentary that they released in 2022. I really recommend checking out both. I believe genuinely you can read this book without having to see the documentary, and you can see the documentary without having to read the book. But if you're a fan, like I say, like me, and you want everything and anything you can get your hands on, this is the book to get hold of. And again, I wish all Stephen King projects could get the love and attention that this book got. In the world of horror documentaries, Cult Screenings UK Ltd is arguably rivaled only by the guys who are responsible for Crystal Lake Memories and the Never Sleep Again documentary. So if you are fans of those documentaries, check these guys out. Unfortunately, well, maybe not unfortunately if you're a collector, the majority of their releases are no longer available to purchase. So if you want to own them, you may have to be paying big bucks via eBay and obviously other online sellers. You're So Cool, the Brewster story, is a fantastic one. The Hellbound Hellraiser documentary that they did is another great one. In fact, a little bit of a side fact for you here. If you have, or if you have purchased or want to purchase the original Arrow Video Blu-ray set of Hellraiser 1, 2 and 3, there is a edited down version of Leviathan included in that Blu-ray. I strongly recommend picking that up. I believe, and I'm not quoting here, but I'm sure I heard in an interview that the creators of Leviathan, the guys of Cult Screening, did actually say that they really enjoyed the edited down version of Leviathan. They were responsible for it. However, you cannot get that documentary on the later, more recent 4K Hellraiser Tetralogy edition. It's not on there for some reason. I don't know if it was a rights thing or if this documentary was created for an exclusive release. So if you can get your hands on Hellraiser 2 Hellbound or Hellbound Hellraiser 2, the original Arrow release, it contains some of Cult Screening's work. So if you're a Hellraiser fan and you happen to already have that on your shelf and you want to dip your toe into this organisation before you take the plunge to buy the book or the Pennywise documentary, that's what these guys are all about. So I recommend looking there. I really hope you've enjoyed this video. It wasn't designed to be a deep dive into the detail of the book. I don't want to spoil it for collectors. I don't want to spoil it for people who are still waiting for their copies, but it is a really strong book, well worth picking up, and a top thumbs up from me. So until the next time, stay scared.